All right, so I'm in here with my guy. I've been excited about this. I'm excited to do this. Happy to have the opportunity to sit and talk a little bit, rap about everything that you're doing, man. So first of all, thank you for doing this. Getting back to Behind the Mind, and I got my guy, Steve Williams.
My God, appreciate you having me, man. I've been watching this series for a while, so glad to see it coming back. But even more, happy to be a part of what you're doing, man. It's a wonderful movement. A lot of different stories that I've seen so far have been inspiring. So hopefully, a little bit about me can inspire somebody else in the same way.
That's what's up, man. Let me get closer.
Yep.
So we're in your spot, man. First of all, this is a beautiful thing, and we're gonna get to how you got to this.
Okay.
But I want to start from the very, very beginning, man. So where you from?
Northeast Baltimore, man. The home of the Northwood Rams and all that good stuff. So grew up, man, Northeast Baltimore for the most part. My entire family lived in a 2-mile radius. So, not only was it home to me, it's kind of where we hunkered down, as a family. So, always been around family. That's always been something that's important to me. So yeah, man, Northeast Baltimore is my humble beginnings.
So what was growing up like?
Growing up, grew up in a 2-parent household. Got an older sister who's my elder by about 6 years. So dad is a retired fireman. Mom worked for years at a law firm as a legal secretary. So, a house where, 2 really blue-collared, hard-working individuals. It's kind of what I seen, growing up. So I seen, a married couple. I didn't have an experience where, my dad wasn't around and that type of thing. Stories that, as brothers we hear about a lot. But I really was able to see my parents kind of work together. I always remember things like, them having like a notepad on the computer desk with like bills, written out and, how much need to get paid, savings and that type of thing. So kind of a lot of the stuff that drives me today that I implement, in my own life and that I try to pass down to my kids, I didn't create it. I was just fortunate and blessed enough to be able to see that, and see it work in other people. So a really structured house. Definitely compared to others, probably considered to be a strict household. Growing up, I couldn't appreciate that. But I think looking back on it now, man, I was never in the street. And I didn't have to look externally for role models and that type of thing. So I think a lot about my life, especially the things where I found success, came from that strict, but structured, household.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in that, where'd you go to elementary school?
Northwood Elementary School. So, back then it was kind of commonplace that, you use your aunt's or your grandmother's address type of thing. Luckily I got a grandmother on Northbourne, an aunt on Woodburn. Don't try to come and lock my mom and dad up for doing,
I think y'all passed
we got to be
the
past the
statute
statute of
of
limitations on that. But, luckily, not only did that allow me to go to a school of my parents' choice, but, it also gave me a safe space to go to after school, right? So I didn't have to navigate through a lot of terrain and that type of thing as a young fella. And I mean, about what that looks like, in different parts of the city when all you're trying to do is make it home. And those become some journeys that, that you got to try to figure out on your own. So, Northwood Elementary Schools where I met a lot of friends, man, that I know even to this day. That neighborhood, people that I still remember and call friends, just from the neighborhood. So, was a real blessing to be able to get a good foundation at Northwood, one of the places that I kind of call one of the best elementary schools in Baltimore, especially during that time.
And it's funny because I know we definitely crossed paths during that time. 'Cause I grew up 1656 Northbourne Road.
Yep.
So the square,
Yep.
The infamous square.
Exactly.
So there was so many good football games out on the square. They played a lot of baseball. I had a strict household too, so my father was. I had to play when he wasn't home because he hated that the way that they had it set up. houses on the other side were on the upper hill, and ours was on the lower hill.
Gotcha.
So they would hit the ball that way. So sometimes the ball would break the windows on the outside, and he was like, "You better not be out there playing." So I knew when I played, I had to be done by 4. So,
before he was making
I
home.
had to be done by 4:00. Man, so after Northwood, what did you do? Middle school.
Yep. So middle school, I went to Roland Park, which again, for me in my eyes, just kept it, being in a position where, I feel like I was being given rigorous coursework, and that just continues, that I can look back on certain people, that I ran into as far as instructors and things like that who, it was zero tolerance, right? Like it was almost like you are privileged to be in this place and you are going to live up to the standard that brings, So again, just going from one institution that I feel like invested in their kids, it wasn't just necessarily status quo, they were looking to bring the best, out of kids. So now what changed for me in that environment is now I'm a bus rider, right? Now, I got a little bit more flexibility in how I'm kind of moving out here in the world. And I think that's kind of when you start to realize a few things about yourself through certain experiences. That's when I do now have to try to navigate through some different neighborhoods and make my way home safely and that type of thing. But also, kind of on my way to school and on my way from school, it's like I'm walking past Gilman every day, right? And I'm seeing this big sprawling campus, and as great as of a school that Roland Park was, I'm like, well, you got Gilman right here, you got Roland Park Country School, across the street.
Yeah.
So I think in my mind, that's kind of when it started me kind of my worldview, right? Because it was like, well, what's the difference? You know what I mean? Like, why can they have all of what's going on there? And ours is a really just basic setup. And I don't think then I was starting to get any answers to those questions, but I really started being kind of intrigued around, different demographics and different socioeconomic statuses. That's when it really started to kind of be question marks on a lot of things.
It's interesting too because my path was a little bit similar. Like most of the people from our neighborhood, they did Northwood and then Chicken Pen.
Or Winston.
Yeah, and that was like, or Yorkwood and then Chicken Pen. Like that was the trajectory. And mine was so different because I did Cecil Kirk Young, and then because my mom taught down there, my grandmother lived down there. It's kind of like you said with addresses.
Yep.
And then I went to Roland Park for elementary and middle, but 6th grade, Roland Park and we mutually decided it wasn't the best.
Y'all came to terms.
That's my story, is that we mutually decided it wasn't the best situation for both parties, so they kind of shipped me out of there. But kind of the same experience of that understanding, like that it became a little bit different going to that middle school kind of age range. And I remember the first day of St. Mary's. I went to St. Mary's on York Road when I left Roland Park. And I got on the bus, and it was all the Roland Park people that I knew on the bus, and I had a uniform on.
Yep.
And they let me have it.
Yep.
And I was like, from that day forward, I walked home every day from York Road all the way down to Northbourne. I walked every day because I was like, I'm not getting back on that bus. I don't care what you tell me. So I got to see so many interesting things walking, and my friend lived right up on McCabe. So I saw so much stuff that you probably shouldn't see as a 6th, 7th, or 8th grader.
Exactly.
But and it's interesting that one of the things that you touched on was like your view of the juxtaposition of like a Gilman Roland Park Country versus Roland Park, and then the person that I know now and how your view is. So leaving from there, you go straight to Poly, right?
Yep. So left Roland Park, and at that time, with the school choice, I guess is what it's called. In my mind, it was only one choice. So I put the one choice, and I don't know what would have happened if I wouldn't have got accepted to that, to that one choice. But that's the only place that I could really see myself, based on what I had heard, what my goals were or what I thought my goals were at the time. So yeah, man, we took it a few blocks west to to Poly, and that's when things really started, opening up, and the relationships, with different people that, it's crazy because the relationships that I have with people today, man, like a lot of those started in the halls of Poly or Western or whatever that looks like, and to be in a position where 25, 30 years later, you're still connected to people from all the way back then, man, who know you from when you had nothing and, and had no vision to now. I mean, that's a blessing, man. So seeing the work that you're doing and so many of my other, close friends, man, it's next level, you know what I mean? Because in the work that I was doing before, which I'm sure we'll get into, a lot of people weren't from Baltimore. They were transplants here, right? So, I would talk a lot with people, and it was almost like a sense of everything that they wanted to do, they didn't feel supported because they got to go out and hunt for people. And I never felt that way because I'm like, I'm in my, I'm in my city with my people. Right. So I've never not felt supported, man, especially from that core group of Poly folks, man. And it's always going to be love. Shout out to Poly. Y'all know I was going to do that. But yeah, man, Poly was a good experience again. Those lessons about myself, because I went in, and you hear so much about Poly before you get there, and you get there, and now you're dealing with it. So for me, it was like, okay, well, I can kind of give this much and get kind of B's. So in my mind at the time, it's like, well, why work any harder, right? If I can get B's at Poly, and I'm just doing the minimum, and for what my skill set was, then I'm gonna leave. That was my mindset at the time. Like this is good enough. Now in hindsight, I wish I would have done a little bit more, explored a little bit more of what that institution had to offer. But where I was at that time was, hey, I'm a coast. I can coast through this.
Man, I recently got in trouble for that in a message on a Sunday because I said when I was in school I operated off C's get degrees.
Yeah.
When I got to college initially, and my family let me have it. They were like, "Don't tell kids that C's get degrees. What you said was wrong." And I was like, "No, you're right." Because to your point, I look back on it the same way, and I'm like, I think it's a gifting in being able to just roll through school, and I didn't have to study all night and cram for exams. Like I just kind of went with it. And the same thing, I was like, if I can get B's and C's doing this, like, cool. I'm gonna take the rest of my time and do other things that I really wanted to do.
Right.
So, all right. So we get to Poly. What kind of person are you at this point? Because that's when you start forming a little bit of figuring out who you are.
Yeah. So I think I spent a lot of time figuring it out. I probably spent all 4 years figuring it out. So I think I spent some time trying to be the class clown, right? And I don't know what that was about. Attention seeking or whatever it might have been. So, I think I spent a lot of time in that. In Baltimore, right? You are always, it doesn't matter what block you're raised in, you're a block or two away from something that looks completely different. So I spent some time trying to figure out if I was like a scholar or wannabe gangster, all of that type of stuff that you just, you just trying to figure it out as you go. And luckily, I can sit here today and be okay with saying that because that's what I was moving my way through at that time. I'm glad I got to do it at that time because now today I can kind of be firm in who I am because I experienced that and experienced like feeling like in one crowd you gotta be a certain type of way, in another one you gotta be different. And that feeling that brought led to a lot of the decisions that I made later, from the career choices and leaving careers and that type of thing, just never wanting to be feeling like I couldn't be who I was, and be accepted. So yeah, man, I spent a lot of time trying to navigate that. I was a big fan of the football team, even though I was never on the team, right? But I would sneak on the bus and be traveling to Louisiana and all these different places, right? And we show up and they're like, well, hold on, who are you, right? Like, what do you do? Hey, I'm here now, you know, you don't want to be responsible for me an hour away from, you know, so let's just rock with this. We'll figure it out later, right? So yeah, man, you know, high school was a really good time, man. Even, man, some of the guys that we were our arch nemesis, you know, over at City, man, you know, later became some of my closest friends. So, you know, again, just having that experience, I wouldn't trade it in for the world, man. I mean, you know, again, even knowing that, hey, you can coast, but you got to show up, right? Like, you know, you can't be absent. You can't be absent. You know.
And even coasting was tough because that was back during the time where your starting freshman class wasn't your graduating class.
Absolutely.
So that was back in the days where we would have 350 people in our starting freshman class, and you graduate 168.
Right.
And you like them other almost 200 people, where they go? I mean, you would literally every year you lose people all the way down to 11th grade. You're 11th going to 12th grade, and some people don't make it back. So it was coasting, but it was still work to coast.
And they would remind you every chance they get, right?
You
remember, look to your left, look to your right. One of y'all not gonna be here next year. You know?
And even bigger than that, they would give you the old story about the poly diploma and the Maryland State diploma. And you don't automatically get it. So it wasn't an easy thing, which I think coming out of that program definitely gives you some. It was called college prep for a reason. It definitely gave you preparation for college, if that's what you wanted to do. I think back then I was much harder on the thought process of you got to go to high school and then go to college, whereas now I'm like, you got to do what fits your mold is what I kind of tell my kids. If college is not your thing and you can find a trade or something that you can get into that can equally help you, and a lot of those instances, what I'm saying for some of these kids is they're 4 years ahead of kids who went to college that didn't know what they were supposed to do and just kind of went to college because they thought they were supposed to.
Right. I mean, if nothing more, I think my philosophy has grown to having flexibility, because even if you don't see yourself as a college student and you decide you want to work the workforce right out of high school, it's nothing to say that you cannot return and do college at a later, or vice versa. Right, so, but, you know, for me, you know, I was coming from, you know, I was being molded to be the first generation college graduate, right? So that came with a lot of pressure, because I didn't necessarily know what it is that I wanted, but I know what the other people wanted, you know, for me. And I would agree that I think Poly absolutely prepared for what most thought was the most natural next step, which was going on to college.
So you said you were first generation.
Right, yep. So my dad attended College Park, you know, back during a really, really rough time, you know, for African Americans to be in that type of environment. So he went to college but didn't complete it, and came back home. You know, so for me, you know, I kind of had a little bit of a responsibility to him and the rest of my family to show that, hey, you know, we can carry on our legacy. But, you know, again, in retrospect, that's not the only way, you know, to carry on a legacy.
But I think that's super important, just thinking generations, because mine was kind of the same thing. My mom graduated from Morgan. She was a teacher, but my dad, I think one of the things he really wanted to do that he didn't do was go to college.
Right.
And he was really, really, really hard on me and my sisters about you're going to college. Like it wasn't. So some people, like, they got a choice. Like now, I think our generation is more, you know, to our kids, kind of to the point. You know, hey, you got to figure out what your life path is. But for us, it wasn't figure out nothing. You was going to school, like you was going to college. Like, it was literally, you don't have an option. You're going to go to school, you can go to college, and then you figure out what it is you're supposed to do.
What I would say, though, in all fairness, is, I mean, my pop, even though he definitely wanted me to go to college at one point, I think at some point he also saw that, you know, me coasting through high school. So for him, there was another opportunity that I could have taken as far as the fire department, because that was what he had done. And of course he saw, you know, especially families of other races bring their sons through, their nephews through, you know, so, you know, to him, you know, that was another option for me. So, man, I went, you know, of course I aced the written part of the test, man, but when it was time to do the physical part, man, and they got a 200-pound dummy on a gurney and, you got to run up the steps, you know, and do all of this stuff. I'm like, nah, Pop. Nah, this ain't it even, bro. So I'm going to go into school and do that, you know.
So,
yeah.
all right, so post that decision,
Right.
right? So you do poly, and then what's the next step?
So, man, I was like all ready to go to Lincoln, you know, University with a couple of my closest friends, man. I was there, orientation had already been done, and I get a call, man, like the beginning of August from Bowie State University, and he like, hey, we got some money that, you know, we need to spend. We want you, you know, and your family to come up, do a tour and talk to us. This is like, I don't know, like a Monday. They're like, can you come Saturday? And I'm like, I don't even know why we doing this, but of course my father heard that there was an opportunity for some money, so like we gonna be there on Saturday, right? So man, we got there, man. They kind of laid out the red carpet, offered like a full presidential scholarship, and that was all she wrote. You know, once they heard that, you know, that I had the opportunity to get a higher education with no cost out of my pocket. So, I mean,
that's a blessing.
So I mean, within a week, man, my whole it was just like, all right, I'm going to Pennsylvania and be in Lincoln to, no, you're going up the road to Bowie. And so it was just a quick change, but, you know, again, I guess it was something that was meant to be because it all just worked out, man, perfectly. So I ended up at Bowie State. Again, so now it's like, all right, you in another space that's completely different to you, you know, because at that point I hadn't even traveled much outside of Baltimore. Definitely didn't have any friends or, you know, that type of thing that weren't from Baltimore. So, you know, trying to acclimate myself to the DC, PG, you know, environment. They talking about the way you say dog and everything else. You dress a little bit different, you know, you party a little bit different. So, you know, again, you know, I'm thrust into another environment where, you know, I gotta figure things out. But again, you know, it was a good place to be, and it was a new challenge, and everything was kind of on me to figure out. So it was another test, you know what I mean? And so, you know, I mentioned the scholarship. I go there freshman year thinking I'm gonna kind of coast the way that I coasted at Poly.
Get that college rude awakening.
First semester, I'm on academic probation because, you know, the scholarship comes with you know, that requirement to have that GPA. So, academic probation. First semester, second semester, I couldn't raise my grades to where they needed to be to overcome the lackluster performance in the first semester. So, had a full presidential scholarship for 4 years, lost it in 1 year.
Wow.
Lost it in 1 year. So, you know, the feeling of going home and feeling like, well, what am I going to do now? First and foremost, like, you know, I didn't change schools and all of that just for this scholarship. And now I don't have it. Kind of the feeling of letting my folks down, letting myself down. And then now, like, all right, so, you know, what's the plan? So,
before you get there, one of the things I love about doing this is learning so much about people. And I think people see success and feel like you just landed on it, right? So I think that's, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I wanted to because I just wanted to highlight, like, everybody has adversity, and I think it's important to share adversity so that people understand that when they're going through adversity, it's not unique to them. Like it's called life. We all got and some of it's our fault sometimes, and some of it's circumstance sometimes. But
it's all part of the story, though.
It's all a part of the story to get you where you want to be. So we're gonna take a quick break, and then when we come back, we're gonna pick up with college. But then we got to get to how we get from college to corporate to KDW Catering.
Absolutely.
If you're watching this far, you're already committed. I'm having such a great conversation with my guy, Steve Williams. I'm excited about him and all that he's doing. Make sure you check him out, www.kdwcatering.com. And let's jump right back into this interview. So we're back. We're picking the brain of CEO, founder, extraordinaire, KDW Catering. My man, Steve Williams, dropping some real good stuff on us. Thank you again for letting us go behind your mind. But I want to jump right back in where we were. So this is interesting. So you get a full presidential scholarship to Bowie State, leave Lincoln, go to Bowie, but then academics, and I share my story all the time too. So most people know, when I went to school, I went to Salisbury. I played football. They kept me in check the first semester. Second semester, I got a 185, and I was in that same Act Pro office, and they were like, "You got to figure this out." So, going through that adversity, first of all, what happens next, and then how do you mentally wrap yourself? Because you're young at this point too.
Yep.
So there's a lot to handle at such a young age. How do you bounce back?
So, took a while, because the first thing is like, okay, it wasn't just tuition, the room and board, everything was covered, under the scholarship. So now, I got to figure out how to pay for everything and do everything. So I'm like, okay, the path that I'm going to take is, first and foremost, I'm gonna come home and I'm just going to commute, right? Like, so, the MARC training and that type of situation made that real easy. As long as I can get to the MARC train, I can hop on the train, 40 minutes, I'm on campus. But with that, because I'm home, I say, all right, well, I probably should work. All of these things that I didn't have to think about that previous year now becomes part of my reality, right? So, I remember like one of the first gigs I had was like a seasonal employee at Best Buy, right? This is back in the day when Best Buy was like, for me it was like a dream gig, right? I go ahead, I get all these electronics, like the discount man was like, we would pay like 5% over cost, right? So car stereo equipment and all that, we was paying like nothing, bro. So I'm like, yo.
I remember I worked there for one season.
Yeah.
And Dynex was like my favorite thing in the world.
Oh my goodness. So I become, kind of a full-time student, part-time worker, commuting. So I think that's really when like the hustler in me was kind of born, right? And even though it was self-inflicted, I was living at home, so I didn't necessarily have to really be having a job where I'm making a lot of money or anything, but I just felt that responsibility.
So in that time, do you feel your mindset changing? Like, can you at that time identify like, hey, this is a thing for me. Like, I get a high off of figuring out how to make these moves.
It was crazy because like I became like a night student. So I would work, most days. Some days I'd be up, but I would head to the train around 3 o'clock. Make my way on the campus. Be there from 5 to 9, or if I was driving, once I got a car and that type of thing. But just going through that process where I was getting up the same time every day, regardless if I had class or had work, I had one or the other or both. So it kind of conditioned me to be able to just move through things. Now, I'm looking at people around me, some of my friends coming home during the holidays and this, that, and the third. And I'm like, yeah, I'll catch up with y'all after work. And that's, they're like, well, like, what's going on, bro? Like, hold on. So, during that time, that's really when it was like, all right, first of all, I knew the deal at home, right? You had a scholarship, you lost it. Financially, we will support you, but we're not going to carry the burden of you going to college, right? So got help with books and, and that type of thing. Father bought me my first couple cars and that type of thing, but figuring out how to pay for school and a lot of the things related to being at school was going to be on me.
So you had a very healthy sense of responsibility.
Yeah.
And that's one thing I think, like I watch you, just in life, and I think you give that to your kids too, which is a very big thing of, even and we're going to get into it, the kids, you give opportunities to work with you, it's always a sense of responsibility, not entitlement.
Right.
And hearing what you're saying, you had the situation, lost the situation, they like, okay, we'll help you, but we're not going to carry you.
Mm-hmm. So, I guess my philosophy, because of those experiences, nobody owes you anything, right? And nothing is guaranteed. You're really only going to get out of things that you put into it. So when I talk about coasting, when I was coasting, my results were that. They were results that yield the performance that I was putting in. So yeah, anytime I get an opportunity, man, to touch a kid, whether they are my kid or not, like one of the things that I want is, first and foremost, yes, I want to be able to provide an opportunity, because I believe that we, as folks who've been through a certain amount of things in life, should be providing opportunity. But once that opportunity has been provided, it's really on that individual to take advantage of it and make the most of it. As much as I want for my own kids, as much as I want for a lot of the youth that I deal with, ultimately, if they don't want it for themselves, they're only going to go but so far. But yeah, man, a lot of that just comes from what I had to learn on my own. So if I can help somebody through my own experiences and not see them have to deal with the same thing, I'm all about it.
So when you get to this point, so you're going through school, so you make it. So do you go to the next 3 years and then you get straight to graduation? What happens?
Nope. So it took me 4 years 4 years in addition to that first. So I was a 5-year, graduate or whatever. And at graduation, my now wife is pregnant, right? So I got a whole nother lens, now. So, it took me 4 years and all that became of that because I'm out here living like a grown man at 19, 20, 21 years old. So that comes with a whole lot of responsibility. So now, as I'm walking across the stage, yes, I'm happy that I reached what everybody wanted me to do, but I'm also like, wow, like a couple months.
Real life.
Yeah, a whole nother life, you know what I mean? Like a whole nother life, and even in that moment, I didn't necessarily know, what I wanted. I had obtained a computer science degree in my senior year. I had been applying for jobs and this, that, and the third. Still working at Best Buy. By this point, I had got elevated to like a sales manager, and so that's going well. But I mean, I didn't necessarily see myself a life of retail, right? But I was probably making money that most people were making coming out of college. I had already been making that kind of money, but I still didn't see it as like a long-term thing. But luckily enough, that was in place, so I had insurance. I was ready. I thought to be a dad and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, man, fresh out of college, and it's like, all right, what you gonna do?
So how does life happen for you at that point? So we fresh out of college, we at Best Buy. So you guys had a baby.
Yep.
And then what happens? Are you living together? Are you still at home? Like what happens?
So again, right? All these generational expectations, I call them, right? It's like what you hear or what I had heard was you should never rent. You should always own. And,
Don't shack up.
Yeah. So it's like, all right, we got a baby, so we gotta start planning and we gotta do the. So again, already, I'm like living this persona of like a grown adult. Like my maturity level ain't really there, personality wise, but like when it comes to handling all these different responsibilities, I'm feeling like I got it. So, my kid is born. We buy a house in Northeast Baltimore. My wife and I, we buy a house in Northeast Baltimore that's literally 3 minutes away from the house that I grew up in. So I'm feeling like, I'm grounded in that area. Tiffany has she's starting her career as an educator. So, it's starting to, I guess look like, I guess what people think life should look like, and it's starting to line up in that way. Looking back, again, it was probably way too early and a lot of pressure to that be my reality at 23, 24 years old. But it was what it was. One of my best friends, Montez, right, like he wrote a book. It's called It Is What It Is, right? So like I've always just had that mentality of whatever's in front of me, I'm gonna deal with it. We're gonna move through it. So we buy a house. We in a house for probably 3 or 4 months, and I get laid off from Best Buy. Right? All right, we done bought a house based on our incomes together, and that type of thing. We renovating this house, right? And 3 months into it, man, like I'm laid off. And at that point, yeah, I got a degree, an undergraduate degree in computer science, but I've never worked a day in that space. So that was probably the most devastating thing at the time. You know, I got a kid that's less than 1 year old, or no, a kid that's a little bit older than 1 year. You know, a lady who's just starting her career trying to figure things out. And at that time, you know, on her salary, you know, that wasn't enough to sustain us.
So mindset wise, because this is where it gets interesting for me, like the mindset of somebody who is an overcomer, right?
Mm-hmm.
What is your thought process at that time? Because that's tough. Like you know, you went through the school piece, which is adversity, and then you figure out a way to push yourself, and you make it through that, and then you get to this space, and it's like things are finally lining up for me. You know, we married, we got our baby, we got our house, and then life happens again, where it's not anything that you necessarily did, but company is like, hey, we got layoffs, and you get laid off. What's your mindset like at that point? And then what happens next with you in like career wise?
So, you know, it was a glass half full type of mentality, because again, what we told is all you got to do is get a college degree, and your life is going to be lined up in the way that you need it to be lined up. So for me, I'm like, all right, well, I got laid off, but I got a college degree, so I can start, you know, applying and this, that, and the third. And, you know, I'm getting that little tiny unemployment check, right? But I'm going and doing interviews for one, because that's the requirement to get this. Back then, that's the requirement to get this unemployment check. But also because I really felt that these places that I was applying to, I was qualified for. So that went on for probably, I don't know, 3 months. And then there was an opportunity at the Bank of America, right, that I saw. And that hadn't been a goal, but after sitting on the couch for 3 months, right, it's like, whatever come
like,
my way,
hiring?
yeah, you know, and the number look, you know, good enough that I can make things work, we're gonna do it. So took a job there. But at the same time, this is kind of when my entrepreneurial thing started to kick in, because I bought a couple lawnmowers, right? And just threw them joints in the back of my truck. And I would just ride around trying to get, you know, little contracts to be able to cut, you know, people lawn and this, that, and this. It's just to supplement the income, because kind of how their pay was set up, it was kind of a base salary, and you had the potential to make all of this other money based on sales and all of that kind of stuff, right? And in the beginning, before you build your book of business and that type of thing, ain't no whole lot of commissions or any of that coming in. So, you know, I started, man, you know, hustling. You know, that's you know, I started hustling, and I also decided that I was going to go back to school and get an MBA. And this time, I was going to take school seriously, right? Because of what I experienced,
right,
having that undergraduate degree and sitting on the couch for 3 months and not even getting some return calls. I'm like, okay, maybe that's not even enough. And I thought that the MBA could align with what I was doing, you know, at the bank. So same thing, get in there, started having some of the same success that I had at Best Buy. So now I'm moving up this little ladder, right? It's feeling good. It's feeling good to be able to kind of have a somewhat control over my compensation. And I was feeling like the more I put into it, the more calls I made, the more appointments I set, you know, all those type of things. I was seeing something from that, like, immediately. And I, you know, again, things that happen at Best Buy, things that happen at Bank of America, I still implement to this day. So I don't look back on any of those things as like, why was I doing that, or
it was necessary.
It was necessary to get me to kind of what I'm doing now. So now I'm back into this crazy space of I'm working, I'm going to school, I got a kid, I got a house, right? So it's like, 25, 26 years old, and you got a whole lot that you managing, and still I'm looking around at some of my friends, and I'm like, wow, y'all get to, you know, just have no responsibility, you know, that type of thing. But again, no regrets, because everything that fed into those circumstances were because of decisions, you know what I mean, that I made. So, again, working my way through night school, you know, here comes, I'm not gonna call it a smack in the face, but I'm gonna call it like another life lesson, right? So in my mind, I'm thinking, because I'm getting my MBA, I'm looking at all of these different opportunities in Baltimore, out of state, that Bank of America can provide based on these different sets of criteria and qualifications. And I'm thinking what I'm doing with this MBA is putting me in position, you know, to do these things, right? So, you know, part of that is, at least what I thought at the time, you had to look the part. So, you know, I had dreads, right? Locks, I'm sorry. Dreads is like a bad word to some people now, right? So I had locks, and at some point, man, like I cut them because I wanted to look more corporate, right? Especially the closer I got to this degree, I mean, you know, the second degree. So I'm working my way through that, man, and so I started applying for jobs kind of early, right? Like a year before I was actually finished my program, just to test it out and see, you know, no hits. Now, I mean, at this time I've been there, you know, 3, 4, 5 years. I've been there. I've been working. Same thing, right? Like, but this time, at least I have a job. It's not like I'm sitting on the couch, but I'm still being faced with like no's. So now I'm like, well, why did I do all of this? You know what I mean? Like, because now, you know, from 18 to 25, 20, I mean, I'm like, last 7, 8, 9 years of my life has been all around furthering my education. But right now it's seeming like my education ain't even really doing anything for me. When I rewind and I talk about trying to find my identity when I was in high school, I'm dealing with the same thing. A certain client walked in your office, right? You have to change your way you talk and all of that. Or at least I believe that to be the case, right? So I'm thinking I know who I am, but I'm finding myself in all these different circumstances where I feel like I gotta flip the script or be something that I don't really feel like I am, but to get to where I believe I need to be.
To fit into whatever it is.
That really tight, narrow space. I'm code switching and doing all that, and I'm just like, this is part of it, I guess, right? Like, this is just part. This is how, in my mind at that time, like, this is how it's supposed to be. So yeah, man, we working through that.
So what was the smack in the face part?
The smack in the face is that even with even more education that I already had,
it was still not enough.
It's still not enough to get these jobs. So now, I don't only have education, I got experience, right? Like I got the what I'm thinking is like the killer combination. You know what I mean? Like I got the experience, you know, I got the degrees. I didn't cut my hair for God's sake. You know what I mean? So I got the look, right? You know what I mean? I'm clean, like what's up? You know what I mean? And it's just it's still not enough. It ain't turning anything. Now, again, the good part is I figured out their formula, right, as far as the compensation piece. So I'm making money. So that's keeping me satisfied. But again, I'm losing myself. Right? I'm losing myself. And now I got more at stake, right? Because, you know, I asked my wife to marry me in 2007. We get married. My kids getting older. And I want to be an example, you know, for her. So now, you know, like I'm like, okay, I gotta figure my life all the way out, you know, and I gotta be in a place where I feel appreciated and respected in the work that I do.
So this is around. So we fast forward. This is around like when you hit like your 30s, like early 30s.
Yep.
That you have in this moment of clarity of.
Yep.
Hey, I gotta really figure this thing out.
Yep.
And so at this point, and I know I'm jumping ahead a little bit, so we'll go back. At this point, do you have any thoughts of like, hey, I want to do something for myself, or are you still in the mode of how can I move through this corporate chain?
Nope. So my MBA, in my mind, in getting it was to move me through a corporate chain. It wasn't even to do anything for me because I didn't know any better, right? So I was really obtaining that degree based on the experience that I had with my undergraduate degree, feeling like I needed to have more to prove to these people that I'm worthy of an opportunity, right? It wasn't about me creating my own opportunity. It was about, again, me fitting into this narrow box of requirements that a particular organization had in place just for me to get promotions and different career opportunities within that organization. That was it.
So do you eventually leave BOA?
Yep. And it's crazy, because I tell everybody, except for my last job, which would be the next job that we talk about, you know, the way that it always happens is like, it's like drama, you know what I mean? Like, so Bank of America, how I left, I don't know if you remember, but we had an earthquake, like a really,
Yes.
It was an earthquake. So I guess this is like 2011-ish.
Yeah.
It was
11 or 12, because I was at Penn and a half. Yeah.
It was in that space, right? And we had got like a new regional director who was really on the sales stuff, right? And you know, they would really come in and micromanage and like ask to see your script that you're using and all this different stuff, right? So I'm managing that, already feeling like, listen, I can do what you're doing. That's how I'm feeling. So when that type of thing is being thrust upon me, and in the mindset that I was at the time, it was almost like, I don't need to be coached. I'm uncoachable. I've already figured it out. I got a degree. You probably don't have. You know what I mean? That I was it was the space that you can't really be productive in. So that day, it was one of those things. So that regional manager was in doing that micromanaging thing. The earthquake happened, right? The building's shaking, and I was like, I'm gone.
Wow.
You know what I mean? No 2-week notice, no nothing, no plan, no
Wow.
nothing. So again, putting myself in the craziest position that
Just like today, I'm out.
I'm out, right? Like, sign your stuff out, like, I had enough, right? So, unemployed again, right? Luckily, I had saved a little bit of money, you know, at that point. So I wasn't in the same situation that I was, I guess, 6 years before that. But again, you know, with a kid in a home and a brother. So now I got a degree, 2 degrees. I've got some experience. Back out on the market. Still don't know necessarily absolutely, you know, what I want, but I know now I'm a numbers guy. Right? Like, I know after working in the bank, like, numbers is really kind of what motivates me, is what, you know, manipulating a spreadsheet. You know, that's what I like to do. So opportunity arose at the American Federation of Teachers for a researcher. So here I am. You know, I take it, great starting pay with a phenomenal opportunity for growth. I'm in a new space, right? So I'm working in DC. I'm now, you know, going from kind of having clients to doing a lot of presentations and research, again, right, which helps me in everything that I'm doing today. But it was, at the time, it was something completely new, so I had to stretch myself in a lot of different ways. In that's when I kind of started being like, okay, well, if I were to start a business, like, what would I do? For like the first time, like, it was like, okay, if I were to do something of my own thing, like, what would that look like? And to be honest with you, 2 of the people who inspired that thinking in me were you and Kyle Pompey.
Oh, wow.
Right? So at the time, y'all were kind of getting your things off the ground, and that wasn't anything that I had kind of seen before. Like, we talking 2012, you know, 2013. I hadn't known a lot of folks who were just deciding to do their own thing, who are around our age and all of that. I saw what you guys were doing, especially in the space that you were deciding to go into, and it really inspired me. But at the same time, it was like, I don't really just want to have a business to just because of money, right? So if you think about it, all the way back to 1999, when I was started at Best Buy, there was never a period where I was working where I wasn't highly compensated. So it's never been except when I was unemployed, right? Like it's never been about making money, and I don't want this to sound or come out the wrong way, because I never had a problem making money. Like once I was somewhere,
right.
You know what I mean? Like once I had a space, I'm gonna figure out how to make money. So it was like, all right, if I start a business, it can't be around making money. It's got to be something that I like, that I enjoy, and I want to be able to still work my job, because my job is paying me well. I got great benefits. I'm traveling all over the country, being in places that I never thought I'd be, for any reason. But here we go again with the finding your identity. So now I'm around a lot of highly educated folks who from all around the country, who have all these different experiences, been all these different places. So I'm in meetings. We're doing the whole happy hour thing after work, and I'm never feeling like, it's not that I didn't feel accepted, but I just didn't feel like that was me or I was a part of that. You understand what I'm saying? I'm like,
it's funny that you say that, man, because I'm listening, like, just the whole thing, like, when you don't know people's full stories, like how mirrored our experiences are. Like, we being in corporate America, and I can tell you the exact day we went to a happy hour. We went to the movies when they opened that movie downtown, movie theater downtown Baltimore, and then they added the part where you could drink, and I remember going with them, and I remember just being in there feeling so disconnected. And it wasn't like I wasn't, like you said, it wasn't like I wasn't invited. I'm in the room, because that's what people say, you got to get in the room. So I'm in the room, and it just wasn't me though. Like I'm here, I'm with it, but I'm not with it. Like I'm here physically, but mentally I'm like, this is not me.
And the craziest thing is, it's like, from a collegial support aspect, it was probably the most supported I had ever been in any, people were telling me, like, for the first time, like, oh my God, you're a whiz, you know what I mean? And I'm like, thanks. But I don't really want to do the happy hour, because I don't want to talk about the work that we do, but I didn't feel like I had a lot to offer to the discussion. So as you're talking about the places that you've been and the things that you've experienced, and I'm just kind of like, well, I'm from Baltimore. You know what I mean? That's the way I've always lived. That's where my whole family is from. Like that's who I am. So I'm learning, man. I'm growing. Again, here I am, and at this stage, my third career. I'm not calling it a job. I mean, all three of these places, I was 5, 6, 7 years, in. So everything was long term, and it's providing, man, this level of growth that I didn't, expect from myself, because I'm challenging myself in ways that I didn't anticipate. So it's going well. Again, I'm moving up the ladder, getting promoted, this, that, and the third. Being sure, because of my previous experiences, to maintain my same standard of living. So when I'm getting raises, I'm not going and buy a car, I'm not buying another house. Like,
that's important. That's important to add, because I think we both are very close with Miss Financial E, and before meeting her, I believed in it, but after meeting her and getting closer with her, I'm really big on not doing that. Just because you make more going this extra mile, because what if more goes down? So trying to figure out how to live off of what I've been living off of, and figuring out what to do with investing or saving this extra, and how to move with that. So there. Now, do you start the business while you're working there, or how does that work?
So I finally decided that, okay, I think, one of the things that if I'm going to start a business, there's a few different ideas floating through my mind. I'm like, food, right? Like, so by this point, it's I'm gaining a little bit of a following for just me cooking at home, for my family, and I'm finding that, I like this, and at the same time, I'm not just cooking food, but I'm learning more about food, how it relates to our health, right? Especially African Americans and diabetes and high blood pressure, and just kind of how food fits into your lifestyle.
It's something important that you said too. So it's bringing you joy when you cook.
It's bringing me joy. Like, I'm coming home every day. I'm stopping at the market and I'm grabbing things. I'm taking pictures. I'm new to Instagram at this point, but I'm taking pictures of my dinner every night. But I'm having fun. So I decide that, okay, I know a lot of educators. I know a lot of healthcare workers. I know a lot of people who like either work in a high-paced profession or geographically their work site is located in like a food desert. So when I'm learning more about some of these ailments like high blood pressure and that type of thing, I'm like, okay, well, if some of my friends work in a food desert and their only options are a cheesesteak or chicken box or Chinese food, right, like on a daily basis, what other decision they're gonna make if that's their only option. So I'm like, okay. At this time, man, I'm not gonna say that I started this, but there weren't many people doing this back in 2014. But I said, all right, I'm gonna start a meal plan service, right? So with this meal plan service, it's not gonna impact my job at all because I'm only gonna do it on a weekend, right? I'm gonna email. At this time, I'm just emailing out. I got a list of emails. I'm emailing out a menu every week, telling people, hey, let me know, and I'm gonna come out and I'm gonna deliver it on Sunday. So that's like the beginning of KDW Catering. It was just intended to be a meal plan service that was not gonna impact my career that I was growing in and learning and getting compensated in a good way. So I'm doing it, and I mean, man, it wasn't 2-3 months into it, and people were like, can you cater my birthday party? Can you cater my wedding? And I'm just like, cater? Like, I'm just doing meal plans. You know what I mean? Like, you want me to bring these, you want me to put your wedding meal in a container and like, what you want? Like, that's my lane, right? So, early on, I had to say no, because I wasn't gonna walk into a situation where people are dependent on you in that type of way and not be educated in the work. So I spent some time, educating myself. And then I was also like, I'm gonna stop and pause. And now that I know this type of interest can be there, I'm gonna focus on building a business, right? So I stopped selling anything, and I'm like, okay, let's make this a brand. You know what I mean?
Man, so super important because my premise in life is passion, purpose, paycheck. Like I think, they should probably put it on my tombstone. Like, I really believe you find your passion, that leads you to your purpose, and the paycheck will come with it. Absolutely. So, like, and just hearing you say, whereas not most, some people would have looked at that as, hey, this is an opportunity for me right out the gate. Let me just jump into catering these weddings or birthday parties, even though I don't know nothing about it. I'm gonna just jump out there and do it. But I think it's interesting, hopefully, for people to hear you say, no, I stopped and took the time to learn what that industry was before I said, I'm gonna just jump into it. So in learning what that industry is, you start to figure out some of the nuances of it, and then you come back to it. How do you? So when you say branding, because I'm super. I mean, we both are wearing like I'm super big on branding. So how do you put that together? Like, what happens?
So now it's like, it's it's hard for me not to believe in a higher power, right? Just based on my life, because now I'm like, wow. Now the NBA really make a whole lot of sense. Like I remember capstone projects and all type of things that I did that at the time I had no idea that I was going to be in food service. But I remember one of my capstone projects was writing a business plan for a restaurant, right? Like, and again, I don't know why I chose that, but that's the project that I chose. So I'm taking all of these things, man. At Best Buy, I was reading profit and loss statements, right? Because we had to do sales projections and all of this different stuff, right? At Bank of America, I'm learning how to build a book of business, right? And how to do outreach and how to begin to market different products. At American Federation of Teachers, I'm learning how to research, like deep dive type of research into different industries and this type of thing. And I'm becoming like a G on the spreadsheets, right? I know that sounds like a real nerdy thing to say, but like I'm taking data and being able to really make sense of it. So I'm like, I'm gonna take all of that and I'm gonna work on that, right? So I'm gonna write a business plan. I'm gonna do a market analysis of who the players are, in Baltimore as far as what catering looks like. I'm gonna call them and forgive me, but I'm gonna lie and say I'm having an event so that I can see what pricing is, and I don't need to be where they are because I'm just starting out. But I also feel like I don't need to be at the bottom.
You need a ballpark.
So how do I land in a comfortable spot within that range?
I think everything you're saying right now is so educational for people who want to do anything.
Yep.
Like, again, going back to something I said earlier, people see success and feel like you just landed on Success Mountain, man. I remember us going from church to church when we were starting the church, and we would have a list, literally, of do's and don'ts. Like, things that we going to take, things that we don't like. And that kind of preparation always has to precede any kind of success. So when you're doing these things, you still, it's not like, again, it's taken away from your current job because you're still at your job.
Yep.
So when you first launch it, what does it look like?
So when I first launch it, right, we go back to, so when I first launch it, it's like, I launch it. Here's the website. So in the beginning, like I told you, I had a group of 20 or so emails, and I'm sending people emails and they texting me and that type of thing. But it's like, okay, the big thing for me for the launch wasn't, okay, we're about to start selling you meals again, but it's, you can go to our website, learn more about who we are, you can purchase your meals there. So the people who had already been dealing are like, oh wow, like, you know what I mean? Like, you taking this kind of, taking this seriously. The business from a financial aspect is grounded, business account, bookkeeper in place, the legal aspect, we got contracts, so in the beginning, right, somebody calling about catering, and I'm just kind of starting out, and I'm like, okay, I'll send you a proposal, I'll send you some people like, what? Like, come on, bro, I just want some food, you know what I mean? And I'm like, bro, like, this is who we are, I just need to make sure that we, we're doing it the right way and it looks a certain type of way. So, I got a lot of stuff that's in place before I sell anything that looks like what people who've been doing it for a while.
And what year is this? Just for perspective.
This is 2015, 2016.
Okay.
Still working. But we growing, man. Like we growing, and I'm finding so much joy in it, man. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm hustling again, right? So that same hustle that I talked about in undergraduate, when I was going from Best Buy to Bowie and that type of thing. Now I'm back to that, right? And I'm loving it because I'm, in the beginning, everything is growth, right? Like, 'cause you're coming from nothing. So like, almost every week something new's happening. I'm learning something. I'm meeting somebody. I'm being poured into, because I got a lot of mentors who never held back any information, supported me the whole way. I got friends and family members who are spending money with me, encouraging me. So I mean, it's feeling great, man. It's feeling great. The roadblock becomes I'm cheating both things. So I gotta tell clients, forgive me, clients back in 2015, 16, but I gotta tell clients that I'm booked for a date because I gotta be at Cincinnati for a hearing on school finance, right? Or I'm taking a day off from work to prep for or to do a catering job. So I'm telling them, hey, I can't come to work today, so.
Man, I'm listening to you and something just hit me. So it's almost like when you said cheating. So it's like I'm cheating on my purpose with my paycheck.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. So so at that time I'm like, all right, I think what you're doing is you're giving yourself a glass ceiling in both things. Right? So by doing this to your job, that's gonna catch up to you at some point and your performance is gonna lack because of what you're trying to do over here. And then over here, I'm like, you're never gonna figure out what your true potential is by doing it, you know, on this half-time basis. But still, I'm telling myself that I can do it. I'll figure it out.
How many years is it into it when you start having these thoughts? So 2015, 2016 is launch time. So how many years in are you like, hey, I'm.
Yep. So 2017, early 2017 is kind of like, and then the work is getting more intense. It's a position that's really political, and it's tied to what happens in local elections, state elections, federal. So you know, a lot's going on, right? And I'm busy. So fast forward late 2017. I'll never forget it, right? It's September. I don't know what week in September, but it's in the month of September. So I'm in Cincinnati on Monday in a negotiating session. I flew out of Cincinnati, was in a 2-day negotiating session in New York City. Luckily, you know, I got to see Dave Chappelle at Radio City Music Hall that week, right? As part of that second trip. But the third leg of that trip was Pittsburgh. So 1 week I was in Cincinnati, New York, and Pittsburgh, with the plan of having my first annual crab feast on Sunday, right? So the plan was to fly out of Pittsburgh Friday night, spend all day prepping on Saturday, throw the crab feast on Sunday. My flight out of Pittsburgh gets canceled. It's the last flight out of Pittsburgh. So I'm like, no problem. You know, by now, like I done been traveling so much, I can just maneuver and be flexible. So I'm like, I'm just gonna grab a rental car, do the 4-hour drive home, so I'll be home. I get about 2 hours into the drive, and I just started. I didn't feel right, you know what I mean? But I'm still just like, you know, powering through. And eventually, I said, okay, let me just pull over at a rest stop, you know, throw some water on my face or whatever. It was a feeling that I, you know, couldn't really explain. So I go in the bathroom, throw some water on my face. I come out, and I don't know what car I'm driving.
Oh, wow.
I can't remember like the rental car that I had. Still, I mean, this crazy hustling mindset that it's fine, you know, just keep driving. If it gets any worse, you know, you can stop at Good Samaritan or whatever when you get back in Baltimore, right? So get back in the car, start driving. I get to Frederick, and I can't feel the left side of my body. So I go to an emergency room in Frederick. It's looking like, you know, signs that I had like a small stroke or whatever. So this is like September 2017. My job is completely supportive of, you know, this is what you're going through, take as much time as you need, you know, that type of thing. And during that time, man, it was like an enlightening experience. It's like, yo, like your oldest kid about to go to high school. By now, I got another daughter who is about to go to elementary school. And it's like, you can't keep up at this pace and be what you need to be over there. So, you know, even with the whole me beginning to have a purpose, it took that experience to deepen that purpose and understand that, you know, I can't be here for them or anybody else if I wasn't in a space to be able to take care of myself. So after much back and forth with my family, with my job, you know, I said, hey, it's time. Time to make a decision. And I made a decision that I was gonna go full time because of the role that I had at my job. I'm letting these people know in October that I'm done, but hey, I'm gonna help y'all with the transition. I'm gonna help y'all hire for my position. I'm gonna help y'all bolster up the program that we're running. But at the end of February, I gotta be gone. So I'm giving y'all, you know, a nice amount of time, you know, to try to do things the right way for the first, you know, like, you know, because of that last experience, I don't want to just, even though it's a health thing, I don't want to just walk out on this situation. So try to do that right. started preparing for my, transition. So at the end of February 2018, the full-time thing became a reality. It was crazy because I remember like my youngest kid was like between schools or whatever. So the first few months, man, of me like going full time and trying to figure that all out. I'm like daddy daycare, right? Like I got her with me. Like, I remember we painted this place, right? And like I left her for just like a minute, and I came back. She had purple all over the walls. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, all right, but I'm like, okay, all right, this ain't so bad, But that's when it got, that's when it was like, all right, it's on and popping. I was continuously learning, continuously growing, and I had a plan, right? Like I wanted to go into this and using this platform to do other things was high on the list of priorities, right? So it's like, how do I provide other opportunities for other people? By now, a lot of people I know are starting business. So how can I use my platform to give them some leverage as they enter the market that they in, right? So, I got people who do marketing and all these other things. They became my client, right? Like, because I know what helped me is having full-time contracts, right? So I started saying, hey, Asian McDaniels, you gonna be my graphic designer, marketing specialist. I want you to draw up a contract. We can agree on what I pay you every month, but you're gonna be able to depend on that. Erica, I want you to be my bookkeeper. Write it up, So I'm trying to bring everybody along with me. You know what I mean? Like whoever I can think to snatch up who can benefit from what I'm trying to do. Let's go. You know what I mean? Let's all go. Let's all figure this out together. Let's all support one another. Let's all bounce ideas off of each other and let's grow. You know what I mean? And it felt good to be doing my own thing. It felt good to be able to leave work whenever I want and show up at school. You know what I mean? When they need me. It feels good to be able to move things around and be able to be at the volleyball games, and all those other things that were important to me that I didn't, that I couldn't do before.
And looking at it now, for me, the inspiration is, and I love talking and having these conversations with people that I'm inspired by, is even when I pull up outside and I see the name out front, like it, and then seeing it grow from an idea to this is your reality now. Every day you walk into this. So when you walk into these doors, what's the feeling like walking in, or even pulling up in a truck that's got your name on the side of it? Like your company name is on the side of the truck that you drive to work every day. What's that feeling like?
I mean, that's everything. I mean, first and foremost, because the name of my company, KDW, that's the initials of my two kids, right? So, for one, just letting them know that though I haven't always gotten everything right, the real inspiration behind everything that I do has a lot to do with them, right? And them being able to see something that symbolizes like them, and nothing that I do is it to try to force my kids into what it is that I do, but the hope is that what I do will provide opportunities in whatever space they decide that they want to dwell in, right? So building a network of people that, hey, whatever it is that you want to do, I want to be able to pick up the phone and at least have you have a conversation with someone, whether that be for opportunity, whether that be for information, whatever it might be. So this whole just foundation is really for them to hopefully step onto and use it, to further their lives and to further, whatever they feel like is important to them. And getting up, man, and being reminded that every single day, because it's on my shirt, it's on my hat, it's on my car, that keeps me grounded, that keeps me focused. And I mean, it's marketing, so it helps people to learn who you are and what you're about. And I don't mean to segue too far, but even in doing that, once the business got started, I knew that being in that nonprofit space was something that was going to be important to me. So right away, again, right, you grab up a bunch of the people that you love and that you care about, that you want to move things forward with, and you say, hey, I got this crazy idea, to start this nonprofit. Ain't nobody getting paid. It's gonna be a lot of work. Are you with me? And I mean, when people sit back, man, and talk so much about haters or not getting support from people and that type of thing, it blows my mind, because I'm like, man, like nobody really ever done told me no. Like if I'm being hated on, I don't feel it, because I'm surrounded by so much love. You know what I mean? That if it's somebody out there that's targeting me with hate, it's so much in between me and that. You know what I mean? That it never gets to me.
And a lot of it is the energy that you give off too. Like even with what you're saying, we call him 5 Star, but Kendrick, he man, he really blessed me early on. Somebody said something crooked about him, and I was with him, and he was like, man, I respond to everything with love. And then I would watch how he moved post that, because people can say that, but they don't gotta live that. And I watch how he moved post that, and he's the same way. Like when DJs needed something, he always supporting them. Somebody needs something, he's shouting about. He doing whatever he can to help people, and I think that helped me with being more comfortable with being that way, because I'm naturally that type of person. But I think being with him in those situations real early on helped me with that, and I noticed that same kind of energy that you give of who can I help, who can I put in a position that, same kind of way I am. Like if I got any kind of platform that somebody needed, like what you need, like how we get you where you want to start something, how we help you start. You want to do something, how we help you do it. Man, so let me end on this. What's the biggest lesson you learned in being an entrepreneur?
The biggest lesson that I've learned is to always have a plan, and always to be structured in your plan, and before you can ever consider taking anybody's money, or exchanging your services or goods or whatever, be sure to handle all of the legal stuff, all of the business stuff like first. Because if you can present yourself as a business outside of that product or outside of that service, and people come to you, they know that you're a business. I say it all the time, right? A lot of people can fry chicken, a lot of people can cut hair, a lot of people can provide massage therapy, a lot of people can do all of these different things. So what's really gonna separate you in business is the business, right? So if I make a crab cake, if I have to make a crab cake every week by profession, the crab cake gonna get better. So I don't have to put all of my focus into the crab cake. If I don't spend the appropriate amount of time building and growing the business, it won't matter how good the crab cake is, because my business will not sustain itself. So really digging deep. And again, man, I have a luxury or a blessing that some people don't have, because I'm educated in business administration. So what I tell folks is, if you're gonna start a business, it's okay to take a class here and there just on some fundamental business pieces, so that your product or your services matches how you move in the space of the business.
That's good stuff, man. Yeah. Man, I appreciate your time. I know you're a very busy entrepreneur, man. But let's end on something fun. All right. I just call this rapid fire. So first thing to come to mind, you just roll with it as quick as can be. All right, favorite food?
Oh, lobster.
Favorite number?
7.
Favorite movie?
Woo. Belly.
Favorite rapper?
Rick Ross.
Favorite time of year?
Summer into fall, so middle September, late September.
Favorite place to visit?
Jamaica.
Oh man, good stuff, man. Again, I appreciate it, man. This has been fun. Definitely inspirational. It's crazy to learn so much about people that you think you know. Like every time I do this, I'm like, oh, I thought I knew this person, and then just hearing like the stories behind the stories, is like, man, I didn't know anything, because people have things that they go through to help them get the way they are. And I appreciate you taking the time to share your story with so many people.
Hey man, like I said, I appreciate you doing this, because I agree with that, and you never know what little nugget in here or in there, is gonna help somebody. So you even putting this together, man, it's important, because there's not a lot of space, for us to share, even though, Facebook and that, but if we aren't strategic in how we communicate with one another, that space just becomes something that, is where you can get lost in, right? So you pulling this type of stuff together, man, is important. Like I say, I appreciate you, because a lot of what you were doing early on, man, it made me understand that it's possible, you know, with the right plan, with the right people around you. So, you know, thank you,
I appreciate it.
in more ways than one, man. So keep going, you know, keep doing these, man. If there's any way that I can support any of your work, hopefully that you know that, you know, I'm always there. Just keep banging, man.
Appreciate it, man. We're doing it again on a different level. I got a lot of different thoughts on things we can do, man, but appreciate it, man.
Yep.